where, of course, Elian will be meeting with his grandmothers. We don't know exactly who else will be in that room or whether the relatives of Elian in Miami will be allowed into that room. That is up to some debate. We do know this much. This is the compound that Elian will be entering shortly to meet with his grandmothers. How long is anyone's guess? But obviously this has got to be a very emotional moment for them, a very emotional and confusing moment for him. We'll keep you posted on those developments. So where does this little boy go? Joining us now with more are two top-rate immigration attorneys. Michael Wilds joins us now, as well as Mel Sachs. Michael, to you first. What comes out of this meeting? I mean, where do you see this going?
Well, I see this as a big political football that's being tossed between different governments. We have President Clinton trying to make overtures to the Cuban government and Fidel Castro trying to maximize what he's done for the last God knows how many decades. Immigration is playing hardball here. Usually they don't start any action to force somebody to do something unless they put in a proceeding. But they said, since we paroled you and we allowed you into the United States, we're going to make sure that you follow our instructions, regardless of how it will affect this child, which concerns me. Again, whether his mother parentally kidnapped the child or not, the fact is she felt it appropriate enough for him to remain on U.S. soil. Let's give him a day in court to see whether or not it's in his best interest.
Make this a family court issue. Take the politics out of it. What do you make of that now?
This case is certainly the cynosure of all eyes in the legal community. The heart and soul of this case is whether or not this is a custody case or whether or not this is a federal immigration case. Right now, since the government has been trying to appease 700,000 Cuban refugees and those who favor the position of keeping them here, they have taken a hard and fast position by ordering that he meets with the grandparents.
Well, do you find that wrong?
I don't find it wrong at all. He should meet with the grandparents, and everything should be done in the best interest of the child. However, the relatives in Miami who didn't want to meet with the grandmothers and who decided that they wanted to only meet with the boy in the home in Little Havana, the government said, look, he's been paroled into the United States, he's under our jurisdiction, and we're going to make certain that there's going to be a location where you're going to meet.
All right, so they meet.
Yes.
I guess what I wonder is, bring me inside that room. I mean, if, for example, the relatives from Miami are allowed to sit in on that, and that's up to some doubt here. I don't know if that is indeed the case. How would that go down?
Well, again,
I mean, what kind of productive meeting would this be then?
I think, again, this is all political posturing. They're trying to get a good photo op here. The Attorney General understands that it does not look good for grandmas to have come to U.S. soil, visited practically New York and Washington, the media states of our country, besides California, and not have even made an overture towards the young man. In all of this, where is the father? Why isn't the father in the room there? My theory has always been, let's get everybody into a courtroom. Let's hear from the grandmothers. Like Mr. Sachs says, it's wonderful. Let's get the children to actually sit down with their grandma, with their father. Let's bring the father's new wife, who's pregnant right now, onto U.S. soil. Give everybody a safe haven, the privilege of coming into the courthouse. I've represented women whose kids have been abducted. They're sitting now in embarrassment that the United States government, over a course of weeks now, has spent so much time, so much money, so much effort, when there are children that are overseas that are forgotten.
What if something wacky comes out of this, Mel? All of a sudden, Elian's with his grandmothers and says, you know, I do want to go back with you.
It's interesting that
And a neutral observer hears that.
Certainly. You know, it's interesting that you raised this issue. This is a 6-year-old. This is a minor. And under the law, it's recognized that individuals who are adults can make decisions. 20 years ago, when Edwin Meese was the Attorney General in the Reagan administration, a Soviet boy wanted to stay in the United States. And he stayed in the United States. And the difference between that case and this one are the ages. This is a child who is unable to formulate a decision. He's in a situation right now.
But does it carry any weight if he does? I know I mentioned a hypothetical, but if he says, you know what, and this sister Lachlan is there hearing it, and he says, I want to go back to Cuba with you. I want to see my dad.
It's certainly a contributing factor. However, as Mr. Weil will tell you, in regard to these proceedings as to who should have custody of a child, you take into account what a father says, What a mother says, unfortunately, the mother has passed away, and what other relatives say, and a determination is made what is in the best interest of the child, not what is in the best interest of the Clinton administration.
But normally
or
the procedure,
Cubans.
something like this, is the kid would automatically go back to his natural-born parent, right?
Clearly, the government has a policy of family reunification. Sons belong with
So
fathers.
what makes this different?
What makes it different is, number one, we have a very different political law with Cuba. If you make it to our shores, you're given the opportunity after a year to apply for political asylum immediately, and then permanent residence a
But
year
we
down
turn
the
back
road.
a lot of people who make it to our shores.
We
don't
turn back a lot of people. The Haitians have been held historically in Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, ironically. And unfortunately, it's a very political law. The State Department is replete with
So why
politics.
should we be any different with this child?
We should not be different with this child. We should treat this as any international case. There are people that argue that this is a parental kidnapping and this belongs in a court. And yet there are people that are arguing that the act that she took by taking this child on a boat was so laudable that she was trying to get him into freedom. Let's at least honor her memory
Well,
in a
let's
U.S.
say we do
court.
honor him, and we want to keep him here, right? But the law says, you gotta send him back to his dad. I would imagine you would need SWAT teams to get in there and get that boy to go back to Cuba, right? It could get very ugly getting it out of there, right?
That's what the government here is trying to avoid, because that's
But is that what would happen? I mean, if we had to force the issue, get Elian back to Cuba, the fact of the matter is it could get very violent.
The federal government at this time could go right in, could actually take him and send him back to Cuba.
But that's not going to happen.
What this would do, what one of the lawyers in this case said, who was representing the extended family, is that Miami would be in ashes. And that's the reason why this has become a political tug of war. Cubans are treated in a different way. Since Bay of Pigs, the Cuban Missile Crisis, we allowed our shores to be open, and anyone who's not interdicted in the sea who reaches land could be paroled to the United
Well,
States.
we kind of drew a distinction with that in the late 70s, right, with all the Cuban prisons being emptied out here,
Yes,
right?
in the Mario boat lift situation, but we still right now have thousands upon thousands of people in prisons throughout the United States, and what's unfair about our immigration policy is the fact that there are so many individuals who are languishing in jails and who are not able to become resident aliens and citizens.
Okay, guys, can we just listen in a little early? We talked about some of the relatives involved here, including some of the relatives of Elian's in Miami. A couple of them were speaking to reporters about 40 minutes or so ago in Washington. Let's listen in.
I wanted to say that Elian right now is very scared. He knows that the grandmothers are here, but he wants to see them, but he's scared that they might want to take him. And I think that the world should know that Elian doesn't want to go back.
Michael Wilds, if that's what the boy said, a boy can change his mind, right?
Sure. I mean, this young man wants his mother back more than anything else on his mind right now. If you asked him if he wanted to go to Disney World or ice cream, he would want that too. We need to bring experts into a courtroom. The government of the United States is now forcing this young man to choose between being with his father and the freedom that his
see what I'm
mother
saying?
chose.
If we take, you guys are the expert lawyers here, but if we even do that, the INS rules and laws notwithstanding, and put this into a family court, we've already politicized the process in just doing that, haven't we?
We've taken a legal act of putting it into court. Our founding fathers have prided themselves on giving due process. We've taken a young man now and basically threatened relatives that are giving him safe haven that if you don't bring him to XYZ space by so-and-so, we're going to remove him. Well, I'd like to call the government's bluff, number one. I don't necessarily think they will put this young man on a plane and remove him. And number two, we are a safe haven. We have the Lady Liberty a few blocks away standing there with her arms open.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. We have a lot more to pursue on this particular case, waiting for Elian to arrive at this neutral location to reach and to talk to grandmothers he has not seen since his mother took him in a pretty shabby boat to get to this country. That was then. This is now. A lot going on with enormous implications at stake on the fortunes of a 6-year-old little boy. We will have more after this.
The unemployment
of events. Elian left about 20 minutes ago from his uncle's house in Miami. This is one of these situations that just gets more and more intriguing, because the question is, who will be in that room when he meets those grandmothers? Will, for example, any relatives from that Miami Beach place where he's been staying all this time? A question as well from some of the Miami relatives in this country who were talking to reporters at the National Press Building in Washington that Elian should be staying here. Of course, the grandmothers have been arguing just the opposite, that he should be returning with them. That is the car in which